The sky above Earth was dark, but not from clouds. It was the shadow of a massive alien ship slowly lowering into the valley outside New Geneva. People all around the world watched the live broadcast, holding their breath. They had never seen a royal visitor from the Zephyrian Empire before. She was not just any alien. She was Princess Ziraloth, the daughter of the High Empress. Born in the stars, raised among warriors, her ship gleamed with silver and blue light. Symbols of her rank glowing along its curved surface. Inside, Zarella stood, tall and calm, her long silver hair flowing down her back like silk. Her skin shimmered faintly under the lights. Her eyes, bright violet, looked ahead with purpose. She had prepared for this moment for months. There were rules, steps, and ancient customs to follow. She expected Earth to honor them, expected horns, honor guards, a path of flowers, a speech from Earth's leaders. But when the ship doors opened and she stepped onto the ground, there was none of that. No music, no army, no royal march. Only one human stood waiting. A young man in simple black clothes, waving slightly with a big smile on his face. Zarella paused at the top of the ramp. Confused, she turned to her guard. Whispering something in her native tongue, "Where is the welcome ceremony?" she asked, her voice sharp. Her guard shrugged nervously. "This may be it, my princess." Her boots clicked softly as she walked down the ramp. Her posture proud, the camera zoomed in on her face, searching for emotion. The human stepped forward and introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Jack Marlowe," he said. Warmly, "Welcome to Earth." Zarella gave him a slow nod. Holding her hands behind her back, "I was told there would be ceremony," she said, her voice calm but cold. Jack chuckled. "Well, I figured that might make things awkward." Before she could respond, he stepped closer and hugged her. Not a bow, not a salute, but a full human hug. Arms wrapped gently around her, Zarella froze, her body stiff like stone. Her guards gasped and reached for their weapons. But she held up a hand, stopping them. For a moment, everything was still. The wind blew gently through the grass, carrying a strange warmth between them. She didn't return the hug, didn't move, didn't speak. And then Jack stepped back completely. Unaware of what he had just done there, he smiled. "Now, it's official." Zarella blinked slowly, her heart beating faster than she expected. No one had ever touched her like that, not without permission. Not even her own people. The hug was not just strange, it was shocking, alien even. Back on the ship, her guards whispered among themselves, eyes wide with confusion. She turned away without a word and walked back toward the ship. The cameras captured. Every step, every breath. News anchors around the world spoke over each other. What just happened? Was that ... A hug. Did the human just insult royalty? Inside the ship, Zarella stood in front of a mirror, her fingers lightly touching her shoulder, the spot where his hand had rested. Her reflection looked the same, but something inside her didn't feel the same. What kind of greeting was that? She whispered to herself. One of her guards approached carefully. "Shall we report this insult to the Empress?" Zarella shook her head slowly. "No, not yet. But Princess, he touched you," the guard insisted. Without permission, Zarella looked down, her voice low. "Yes, and it didn't feel like an attack." The guard didn't understand, but he obeyed. That night, while the world debated and the alien council watched closely, Zarella sat alone in her chamber, watching the moment on repeat. The way he smiled, the way he didn't show fear, the way the hug wasn't forced, was just human. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew one thing. This mission was no longer just about politics. Something had changed in that brief moment, something deep, and she intended to find out what it was. Asterisk in the heart of the Zephyrian royal ship. Everything was silent the moment the doors closed behind Princess Zarella. Her guards stared at her like they were expecting an order. An order for war, or at least for revenge. But Zarella said nothing. She walked straight to her private chamber, her face calm, but her thoughts spinning like a storm. A hug, a simple, strange, soft human hug, back on her home planet, in the high towers of the Zephyrian Empire. The Council of Elders watched the event with disbelief. The royal transmission played the moment again, and again the human male stepping forward. Smiling and wrapping his arms around the princess, one elder slammed his hand on the table. He violated sacred protocol. Another hissed, "This is a stain on our royal honor." Some even whispered about recalling the princess immediately. Zarella received their message within the hour. It came in the form of a cold, sharp command. Return at once, or challenge the human in ritual combat. To restore dignity, she sat in silence after reading it, the message still glowing on her screen, outside her window. Earth's moon glowed peacefully in the sky. It was beautiful, quiet, and full of mystery. Unlike the constant noise of her home, her fingers tapped slowly on the table. Fight him? Over a hug? Part of her wanted to obey, to prove she was still strong. Still royal, but another part was unsure that hug had not felt like insult. It had felt safe. She replayed it again in her mind. How his arms had not tried to trap her. How he had stepped back right after. There had been no challenge in his eyes, no disrespect, just something warm and confusing. Zarella knew the council would not understand. That her people had no place for feelings, they had only strength, pride, and rules. Still, she had to respond the next morning. She sent a message to Earth's representative. It was brief, formal, and direct. Jack Marlowe is summoned to a private session of ritual challenge, as per Zephyrian custom. Jack received the message while eating a sandwich in the break room. He read it 3 times and scratched his head. Ritual, what now? An older officer nearby raised an eyebrow. Son, I think you've been challenged to a duel. Jack laughed. For what? Being friendly? But orders were orders, and soon he found himself on a shuttle heading to the Zephyrian ship. The landing bay was quiet. Smooth metal floors shining under soft purple lights, Zarella stood in the center of a training arena, dressed in sleek combat gear, her hair tied back, her expression unreadable. Jack walked in wearing his usual Earth clothes, jacket, jeans, and that same careless smile. So, are we really doing this? He asked, looking around because I don't even know what ritual combat means. Zarella raised an eyebrow. It means I test your spirit, your strength, and your heart. Jack blinked. Right, okay. I've got at least one of those. The guards cleared the room and sealed the doors. Then, without warning, Zarella rushed forward. Fast and fierce, Jack yelped and barely dodged. Whoa, you're serious. She moved like lightning, graceful and powerful, every strike precise. But Jack wasn't trying to win. He ducked, rolled, and jumped away. Laughing, okay, time out. Zarella didn't stop, but her movements slowed. His laughter was strange. It echoed in the chamber like a melody. She had never fought someone who smiled during combat. Why do you laugh? She asked mid-duel, breathing harder than she expected, because this is insane. Jack grinned. You're royalty, and I'm just a guy who gives hugs. Zarella paused, her blade an inch from his neck. The silence between them was heavy. Then, to her surprise, she laughed too. It was quiet at first, then stronger. And it made her chest feel light. She stepped back, lowered her blade, and looked at him differently. You are not like other humans, she said softly, and you're not like any alien I've ever met, Jack replied, still catching his breath. The ritual had ended, not with bruises, but with understanding. Zarella declared it a draw. Something unheard of in her culture. Back on the ship's bridge, her guards whispered in shock. No one had ever seen her smile during combat. That night, she stood alone on the observation deck. Staring at Earth's glowing cities, she didn't send a victory message to her people. She didn't claim honor or insult. Instead, she whispered quietly to the stars. I think I want to understand this human more. The stars above Earth were calm, but Princess Zarella's mind was not. The ritual combat had ended without blood, without a victor, and without the honor her people expected. It was supposed to be a test of strength, show of dominance. But somehow, it became something else, something strange, something human. The council back on Zephyra sent another message, their tone colder this time. We demand full details of your victory, it read. The Empire will not tolerate weakness in royal blood. Zarella stared at the message for a long time. Her hands clenched tightly behind her back. She hadn't told them it was a draw. She hadn't told them about the laughter, or how her heart had felt light for the first time in years. Instead, she sent a short reply. The human has spirit. The challenge continues, and with that, she made a bold decision. One that no royal had ever made before. She would invite the human onto her ship again, not for battle, but for something deeper, for a true test of mind. Emotion and culture, she called it the Long Challenge, a private ritual lost to time. Only known by ancient bloodlines, it was not about combat, but connection. Jack received her message the next morning. Just as he was trying to fix a coffee machine, he squinted. At the screen, wait. What's a long challenge? The message had no explanation, just coordinates and a time. His commanding officer raised an eyebrow. This might be dangerous. Jack shrugged. Yeah, but so is bad coffee. And he boarded the shuttle. When he arrived, he found Zarella waiting in a quiet, domed chamber, filled with soft lights and a strange, sweet scent in the air. The floor shimmered like liquid metal, and faint music echoed through the walls. Whoa, Jack whispered. This place looks like a spa on the moon. Zarella didn't smile, but her eyes held a spark. This is the chamber of truth, she said. No weapons, no lies. Jack stepped forward. So, what do we do in here? Hug again? Zarella's gaze narrowed. We share? Share what? Jack asked, genuinely curious. She walked to the center of the room and touched a glowing orb. Images appeared in the air, floating memories from her. Past a lonely training ground, a strict mother, years of silence and battle, Jack watched in awe. That's your childhood? Zarella nodded once. You will do the same? Jack hesitated, then slowly stepped forward, touching the orb. Moments from his life flickered into the air. A messy bedroom, old friends, his mother dancing in the kitchen, a dog jumping into a lake. Zarella tilted her head. Your life is loud, Jack grinned. That's one way to describe it. They spent hours there, speaking, listening, revealing pieces of themselves, not just facts, but feelings, memories, dreams, and fears, for the first time. Zarella spoke of her nightmares, how she feared never being more than a symbol. For the first time, Jack admitted his doubts, how he never felt like he belonged in politics or military. They weren't royal and common anymore. They were just two, beings learning each other at one point. The lights dimmed and soft Sephorian music played in the chamber. Zarella sat beside Jack and asked, Why did you hug me that day? Jack leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. I don't know, he said. You looked alone. I thought maybe you needed it. She looked down at her hands, where I come from. Touch is only for battle or bond. Jack nodded slowly. Then maybe Earth is weird. She turned her face toward him, her voice soft. Or maybe I needed to be weird for once. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was peaceful. Outside the chamber, guards waited nervously. They didn't understand what was happening, and that scared them. Inside, two hearts slowly opened in a placement. For challenges, Zarella broke the silence again. The council will not accept this, I figured, Jack said. Do you care? Zarella took a long breath. I used to. She stood and looked out the dome's glass ceiling, at the galaxy stretching across the black sky. I was raised to lead with power, she said. But maybe leadership needs more than that, Jack. Joined her, standing side by side like hugs. He joked. Zarella smiled, just a little maybe, as the night passed. The long challenge was declared complete, but no one had won, and no one had lost. In the eyes of the ancient code, they were. Now bound not by blood or war but by understanding, Zarella didn't report this to the council. Instead, she kept the memory for herself. Because something had begun in that chamber, something not even the stars could stop. Asterisk, the sun was soft that morning, casting golden light through the trees of Earth's grand botanical preserve. Birds sang, leaves danced, and the air smelled of flowers. Princess Zarella had never seen anything like it, back on Zephora. Gardens were sharp and controlled metal trees, crystal flowers, and programmed rain. But here, things grew wild, untamed, and beautiful. She walked quietly beside Jack along a stone path, wearing a simple white robe instead of her usual armor. 2 guards followed at a respectful distance, trying not to look confused by the sudden change. Of pace, Jack pointed to a tall sunflower. "That one's my favorite." Zarella tilted her head. "Why?" "It's tall," he said, "but it always faces the light." She looked at the sunflower again, her voice soft. "We don't have anything like this where I'm from." They moved deeper into the garden, where the trees grew closer and the air grew sweeter. Jack stopped by a small pond filled with glowing fish. "I used to come here when I was stressed." Zarella asked. "You mean afraid?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, afraid, confused, lost, human stuff." She sat on a nearby bench, her hands resting on her knees. "I was never allowed to feel those things," she said. "Only victory or silence." Jack sat beside her. "That sounds lonely?" Zarella didn't answer right away, but her eyes were distant, remembering cold training halls and long nights under the stars. "Finally," she said. It was, for a while, neither of them spoke, just the sound of water and wind. Then, Jack pulled a small object from his pocket. "Here," he said, handing her a strange little cube. "What is it?" Zarella asked, turning it in her hands. "It's a puzzle," Jack smiled. "Humans use it to test patience and thinking." She studied it closely, her fingers moving slowly as she twisted it. "I like it," she said. "It doesn't fight me. It waits." Suddenly, a faint buzzing sound echoed through the trees. Zarella stood quickly, her eyes sharp. "Something is watching us." Jack looked around. "I don't see anything." She reached into her robe and pulled out a small scanner, her fingers flying across the controls. A tiny dot blinked in the sky, too small for human eyes, but clear on her screen, a surveillance drone. She said, "Not Earth's." Jack's smile faded. "Who would send that?" Zarella's voice dropped to a whisper. "Someone who doesn't want peace." The guard stepped forward, but she raised a hand. "No movement, no panic. Let it think we're unaware." They continued walking slowly, acting normal, but both knew something had changed. Later, in a private Earth meeting room, Jack pulled up a digital map. "This wasn't from our military. It's not even using our tech frequency," he said. Frustrated, Zarella stared at the readings, her mind racing. "It's Zephyrian." "But not from my ship," she said. Jack looked at her, serious now. "Then who?" Zarella closed her eyes, her voice colder. "My uncle." "Wait, your own family is spying on you?" Jack asked, shocked. "Yes," she said quietly. "If I return home with news of peace, he will call me weak. And weak heirs are removed." Jack leaned back in his chair. "That's messed up." Zarella nodded. "It is." That night she walked alone through the garden again, her guard staying behind. She needed to think, to breathe, to feel something other than fear under a blooming tree. She sat down and looked up at the stars. Why does peace feel harder than war? She whispered. She heard footsteps behind her. Jack, holding 2 cups of tea, one sweet, one strong. He said, "Guess which is which." She took the strong one without a word, sipping slowly. "Your people are watching," she said, "and so are mine." "Everyone wants us to fail." Jack nodded. "Then let's not give them what they want." They sat in silence again, watching fireflies dance through the air. Zarella finally spoke. "There's a place." "The inner moon station," Jack raised. "An eyebrow sounds cozy." She smiled faintly. "It's where secrets go to sleep. You think we'll find answers there?" Jack asked. "I think we'll find truth," she said. And truth was something both of them were starting to crave. More than power, the garden behind them faded into the dark, but the path ahead had just begun to glow. The transport ship moved silently through space, heading toward Earth's hidden moon station. It was an old research base, mostly forgotten. Floating in orbit like a quiet ghost, Zarella stood by the window, her eyes fixed on the stars. Jack sat behind her, strapping on a lightweight vest. "You sure about this place?" he asked. Zarella didn't look back. It was built during the First Contact War. Neutral ground, now abandoned by both sides. Jack nodded slowly. "Sounds like the perfect place for secrets." As the ship docked, the lights flickered, and the airlock hissed open. They stepped into the station, boots echoing on metal floors. The halls were cold, empty, and quiet, too quiet. Dust floated in the low gravity like tiny ghosts. Zarella led the way through the old corridors, her scanner pulsing with faint energy readings. "This way," she said, her voice calm but tense. They entered an old command room where shattered screens still glowed with static. Jack wiped dust off a console. "Looks like no one's been here in years." Zarella moved to a locked data terminal, inserting a crystal key from her armor. The screen blinked. In ancient files appeared chords of Zephyrian movements, council messages, and one marked Project Crownfall. Jack frowned. "What's that?" Zarella tapped it open, her eyes narrowing as lines of text scrolled across the screen. It was a plan hidden from the Empire. Detailing a secret mission by Zarella's uncle, the mission's goal was clear. Discredit the princess, frame Earth 4. Dishonor and seize the throne. Jack leaned in. So the visit, the ceremony, the drone, it was all a setup. Zarella's hands trembled slightly. Yes, he never wanted peace. Suddenly, the lights dimmed, and a voice echoed through the station's speakers. "Well done, niece," the voice said, smooth and cold. "You found my little gift, Zarella." "Spun toward the sound, uncle?" she hissed. The voice laughed. "You should have played your part, Zarella. Now you've made things." Messy Jack drew his sidearm, scanning the shadows. "Is he here?"
Isla said, "But his agents might be."
The doors slammed shut behind them with a heavy bang. Alarms flashed red, and the station began to lock down. "Trap," Jack said, raising his weapon. Classic villain move. From the upper vents, shadows moved, and masked figures dropped down with smooth precision. Zarella pulled a blade from her belt, spinning to block the first attack. Jack fired a stun round. At another, "We've got company." They fought side by side, Zarella with sharp grace, Jack with fast instincts. The masked attackers were trained but not prepared for teamwork like this. Zarella knocked one to the floor, demanding, "Who sent you?"
Us.
The attacker didn't answer, just swallowed a hidden chip and went still. Jack grimaced. "That's..." Dark Zarella looked around. "We need to get to the Com Tower and send the files to the Earth Alliance." Jack grabbed a fallen device. "Lead the way." They ran through the twisting halls, alarms blaring, lights flickering, enemies chasing. As they reached the elevator, more drones swarmed in from the docking bay. Zarella growled. "He's not just trying to stop us, he's trying to erase us," Jack smirked. "Well, I'm pretty hard to erase." In the elevator, Zarella handed Jack a copy of the data. "If I don't make it, you deliver this," she said firmly. Jack looked at her serious now. "We're both getting out." They reached the Comtower, a tall, fragile-looking room filled with ancient tech and blinking consoles. Zarella worked quickly, uploading the files. While Jack held off the remaining attackers at the door, a blast shook the station, and metal rained from the ceiling. Zarella finished the upload just as a final drone crashed through the window. Jack tackled her out of the way, the drone exploding behind them. The file transfer confirmed, sent to Earth, to Zephyra, to the Alliance Council. Truth was out, the lies exposed. They lay on the floor, breathing hard, smoke curling through the air. Zarella turned to Jack, her voice soft. "You could have left me." Jack coughed and smiled. "I don't leave friends." She looked at him for a long moment, her heart heavy and warm. "You're more than that now," she whispered. He blinked. "What?" But before she could answer, the emergency beacon flashed. Reinforcements from Earth were on the way. As they waited in silence, surrounded by the damage, they knew nothing would ever be the same again. Zarella had uncovered betrayal, faced her uncle's shadow, and stood beside someone she once called weak. Now, she didn't see Jack as weak. She saw him as her equal, and perhaps something more asterisk. The medbay lights flickered softly as Jack opened his eyes. Everything smelled like metal and medicine. He turned his head slowly and saw Zarella sitting beside his bed, her armor dented, her face quiet but alert. "You're awake," she said, voice calm. Jack blinked. "Did we survive?" Zarella gave a small nod. "Barely." Jack groaned and tried to sit up. "That moon station needs better reviews." A faint smile touched her lips, but her eyes stayed serious. "You saved me," she said. "Again, You jumped in front of a drone for me, Jack replied. Let's call it even. She leaned forward, fingers laced together. There's something I need to tell you, she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. Please don't say you're secretly my cousin or something. She didn't smile this time. My uncle is moving faster than expected, she said. He has already sent a new fleet to orbit Earth. Jack's face grew serious to attack. No, Zarella said, to force surrender, quietly, without war. By making me look weak and unworthy to lead, Jack sat back, letting the words settle. Then we don't have much time, he said. Zarella stood and walked to the window, watching the distant stars. I have two choices, she said. Return to Zephyra, bow to my uncle, and let him take the throne, or... Jack asked. Challenge him publicly, she said. Expose his lies, show them I am not weak. Fight for what I believe. Jack crossed his arms. You already did that, Zarella turned to him. No, not yet. I must speak to all worlds. In my voice from Earth, not from a throne room? Jack nodded slowly. That's risky. Yes, she said. But peace is always risky. Later that evening in Earth's highest council chamber. Leaders gathered around a glowing table. Screens displayed Zarella's image. And news from the moon station flooded in. Jack stood beside her, watching quietly as she took center position. She wore no armor, now only a simple cloak and a clear voice. People of the stars, she began. My name is Princess Zarella of Zephyra. But I do not speak today as royalty. I speak as someone who has seen lies dressed as law. She showed the stolen files, the plans her uncle created, the drones, the betrayal. Some gasped, others remained silent. But all listened. Zarella took a slow breath. When I first came to Earth, I expected fear, weakness, and dishonor. But I was greeted by a human who gave me none of those things. He gave me a hug. Some council members exchanged confused glances. Jack gave a small thumbs up from the side. Zarella continued, her voice strong. It was the first moment I was treated not as a princess, but as a person, and that moment changed me. She paused, letting the silence speak for her. My uncle says this softness is weakness, she said, but I say it takes more strength to choose peace than to demand power. She raised her head, eyes sharp and clear. I will not return to Zephyra to be silent. I will not let fear lead our people. I choose Earth as the place where change begins. Whispers rippled through the chamber, some shocked, some inspired. Jack stepped forward. We stand with her, he said, not just because she's royalty, but because she told the truth when it was hardest. Zarella looked at him, her voice softer now. Thank you, Jack. You didn't just protect me. You helped me find myself later that night. Away from the cameras and council halls, Zarella and Jack sat on a balcony overlooking Earth's cities. Lights sparkled like stars below. I've made my choice, she said. Now the galaxy will respond. Jack leaned on the railing. You think they'll follow you? Some will, she said. Others will resist. Then what happens? He asked. Zarella looked into the sky. Then I fight, but not with weapons. With truth, Jack glanced at her, and if the truth fails? She turned to him slowly, her voice steady. Then we hug again. And again, until they learn. Jack laughed. Now that's a battle plan. Their hands rested close, almost touching, in the silence. Something deeper passed between them, not royal, not political, but personal. Not declared in public, but felt in the heart. A bond that no council could break. A decision not just of politics, but of connection. And as they watched the stars above, both knew the final challenge still waited, but they would face it together. Not as soldier and princess, but as two souls who chose to believe in something more. The sky above Earth was bright with lights, not stars, but ships. Hundreds of vessels hovered in orbit. Watching, waiting, listening, from every corner of the galaxy, leaders, citizens, and soldiers tuned into the broadcast. This was not just another political speech, this was history. On a wide platform built over Earth's ocean, a grand ceremony was about to begin. Flags from every known world waved in the air, holograms floated, Translators hummed, and tension buzzed like electricity. Princess Zirilla stood at the center wearing a silver cloak with no crown, no weapons, and no armor. Jack stood beside her, in a black suit, simple but proud. The wind blew softly as the cameras turned, capturing every movement this time. The Zephyrian fleet did not arrive with threats. It came in silence, led by elders unsure whether to bow or attack. Zirilla stepped forward and raised her hand. "I come not as a ruler," she said, voice carried across planets, "but as someone who was changed by a planet," she continued. "Changed by a people I once misunderstood, her." Image was projected across thousands of screens, moons, and cities. "I was trained to see emotion as weakness," she said. "But then I met a human who offered no fear, no weapon. He offered a hug." A hush spread across the audience. Some looked confused, others curious. One Zephyrian elder whispered to another, "She dares speak of touch," but Zirilla held firm. "That single act opened a door," she said. "Door to a different kind of strength." She looked at Jack, her voice softening, not the kind that crushes, but the kind that carries. Then she turned back to the galaxy. "Today, I do not demand alliance. I invite it, not a treaty signed with blood, not a bond sealed by war, but something new, a beginning." As she stepped down from the podium, the air felt heavy. Would the others accept it? Would they return with silence or worse, fire? Jack leaned close. "You did good." Zirilla looked into his eyes. "Now we finish what we started." She walked toward the delegation from Zephyra, where her uncle's representatives stood like stone. All around them, soldiers watched, unsure, ready. Zirilla stopped just a few steps away from the central elder. A stern woman known as Counselor Thaleen, tradition demanded Zirilla kneel or raise her hand in formal challenge, but she did neither. Instead, she stepped forward and opened her arms. A murmur passed through the crowd. No one moved. The moment held its breath. Counselor Thaleen stared, her face unreadable. Then slowly she stepped forward and allowed the hug. Gasps echoed from every corner of the platform. Some shields lowered, some eyes widened, some cameras shook as the image went live. The galaxy saw something it had never seen before. A Zephyrian elder embracing a new form of greeting. One born not from fear, but from understanding. From a single human act. From change later. As the ships pulled away from orbit and alliances were quietly rewritten, Zirilla and Jack walked together along a cliffside path, far from the noise. "The galaxy will talk about this for years," Jack said, kicking a stone. "Let them," Zirilla replied, smiling gently. "It's better than silence." Jack glanced at her. "You sure you're ready to be a queen who hugs people?" She laughed softly. "I'm not a queen yet." He stopped walking. "But you will be." Zirilla looked out over the ocean, wind brushing her silver hair. "Yes," she said, "but only if I can lead with both strength and softness." Jack took her hand not as a symbol, not for politics, but because he wanted to. She didn't pull away in that moment. Neither of them was royal or ranked, just two souls who had seen war, betrayal. Fear, and still chose connection. Not every alien race would understand. Not every world would follow, but one had started. One had taken the first step, the hug, with a choice, with the courage to do something completely different. And sometimes that was all it took to change a galaxy.